Welcome. Welcome to our software source code interest group session, which is called Infrastructure for Research Software, Moving Towards Adoption. My name is Moran Green-Peter. I work for Software Heritage, the Universal Source Code Archive, and I'm here to host this session with invited guests. They will present themselves when the time will come. First, before starting, some housekeeping rules. You have this note-taking document where you will have to work a little bit. So please go there and start by checking into the attendees list. I already said that this session is being recorded, and most of the activity will be done in the document itself. If you have questions, there is Q&A part there. We will try to keep an eye on the chat as well, but I don't promise that. Something else to say, that if we don't have the time to answer the questions during the session, since it's on a Google Doc, we can come back to that later and make sure that all your questions are being answered. And with that, the agenda for today, that's not the detailed agenda that you can find on the URL of the notes. So there's the full kind of detailed agenda, what will be demonstrated. We have a few goals today. First goal is to meet the software source code interest group. Second goal is to discover our mission to make software first-class output in the scholarly ecosystem. Getting to know existing infrastructure and new features. So you will discover some very new things here, and it will be nice to see that happening. And there will be an activity where you will help us to helping you getting these features and services adopted. So let's start, because it's a very packed session. The software source code interest group. So for those of you who are new to this interest group, it was created in 2017. With me today, we have Julia, and I hope Neil, because he was supposed to be here, and I'm not sure, because before the start of the session, are you here,
Yeah,
Neil?
I'm here.
Oh, good. Excellent. You have Q3 and Q4 to do, so that's good that you are joining. Good to see you. This is an interest group. It's not a working group. We don't have particular outcomes, but from this working interest group, we have some, there were some working groups spawned. It's a forum to discuss research software and issues concerning management, sharing, discovery, and archival of software source code. I want to thank the past chairs that are here on the slide, and the TAB liaison, Laura Huck. I don't know if she could join us today. The group, so maybe a quick note in the chat, or maybe in the note-taking document, if you are or not a source code interest group participant, member, just to know who's here with us. That would be nice to kind of have this information. I know I'm not in a big room where I can raise your hand if you're in the software source code interest group, but hey, maybe you can raise your hand with the icon. The outcomes from this software source code interest group were the software source code identification working group with the report published in 2020, and the very known FAIR for Research Software working group with the FAIR for Research Software principles. And we'll have an update at the end of the session on this topic. And now, why software source code? Because the knowledge is in the source code. Source code provides a view into the mind of the designer. And why software in research? Because software is a pillar of open science, alongside data and articles. It has multiple facets as a tool, as a research outcome, or as an object of research. And it is identified in the UNESCO recommendation on open science. Now, I always show this slide. This time, Neil, you'll be happy. I took your cycle and put it next to the pyramid, the Mosaic pyramid. So if you don't know the culture change pyramid, it is a kind of the way to provide a vision of how to make a change. And we want to make this change-making software a first-class output. So the Niels cycle is that everything affects everything. And why do I like the pyramid is because the base layer, well, here in this session, is the important layer making it possible. We need this infrastructure to be in place so we can have software as a first-class output. And so today, you see it on this slide. You have 4 demonstrations of existing and coming up functionalities in the infrastructure in place. With that, the other layers are very important as well. So we need to keep in mind that it's a moving thing that we need to continue having if we want to have this culture change. Now, first icebreaker question, for those of you who are new to the software source code sessions, we always have an icebreaker question. And it's actually always the same. What brings you here? This time, I've also added the name and the current weather to the note-taking document, but nobody used this emoji. So please use an emoji and say where you are and if it's raining outside, because yesterday it was raining, and for my part, today it's not raining. So please go ahead. I think that you copied my example. My example was not with an emoji. So, well, anyway. It would be nice to see who's here and why. I'm giving you a few seconds to kind of do the activity, the icebreaker. I think it's the link to the slide is in the note-taking document at the top. And yes, it's okay, no problem. And sometimes I see the questions, but don't count on it. If yeah. Okay, I see people writing. I'm very happy with that. Let's add some lines and move to a brief introduction to the research software world. So this is new. I never used this figure before, and you will see that a lot of things in this presentation are things from EOSC reports. Here it's the EOSC task force. There's a EOSC task force. One of the task force produced this report showing the research software lifecycle. I've added it to show you the complexity of software development and software development in the research context. And when we talk about infrastructure for research software, we actually focus this part of publication and dissemination. Okay, so the other parts here are also very important, and we need infrastructure for those, but we are focusing this particular part. Now, why is it important to think of that and to know software? Is that research software is just a thin layer on top of a global software stack. Here, the diagram is from Conrad Hinson Software Collapse, showing how it is really dependent on the full software ecosystem. And so when doing something just for research software sometimes is not enough. This is why you have this kind of blue line showing what scholarly infrastructure can cater for these types of software, while the Universal Source Code Archive, which I will demonstrate in a second, can cater more than just the upper layer. What is at stake? We need to make sure we can access to retrieve the software. So we need to archive it. We need to make sure we can identify the software artifact for reproducibility. This is referencing software. We need to make sure we can easily discover software by describing it well with metadata properties. And finally, and actually most important and most difficult, is we want to give credit to the software authors, make it rewarding to create software. And now, another EOSC publicity. Sorry about that, but it is, there's a lot of things that came from EOSC in recent years. This is the EOSC. Well, when I say EOSC, for those that don't know what EOSC, what does this mean? EOSC is the European Open Science Cloud. And here we see a diagram from the Scholarly Infrastructure for Research Software report published in 2020, introducing the 4 pillars that I've just described: archive, reference, describe, and cite, and providing recommendations for these the scholarly infrastructure to make software a first-class citizen. With that, the recently, well, not so recently, Fair Code for EOSC project, we are trying to create, well, not trying, we are, and we will see, connect APIs and connectors of components between this Universal Source Code Archive and scholarly infrastructure, making it easier for researchers when they want to, when they need to disseminate their research. Here, a researcher that is working in a forge, in a code repository somewhere like GitHub online, wants to also submit this software into and cite this record with scholarly infrastructure. This RSAC, the Research Software API and Connectors component, will then be the connector between the code that is online, that can be archived in Software Heritage, and the scholarly infrastructure. So this is a complex topic, and if you didn't follow through, this is completely okay. With the demonstration, I hope that it will be clearer, but I do know that this is a complex subject. Feel free to add questions in the document while I'm talking, and I promise to come back to that. Because now we are at demo time, and demo time is important. First, I will demonstrate something that already existed before the project, which is Software Heritage. I'm not going to show the video, even though it's here, because I'm here, I'm live, and it might be more interesting, I don't know. So what I will do is welcome you to the Software Heritage Archive that you can access with archive.softwareheritage.org, where you can search for software with a keyword or with a URL. When I say a keyword, it's usually because it is in the URL, but well, that's a way. You can see that there's many different locations that we are archiving. And today, in the video, it's not updated, but today we are at 297 million projects and more than 18 billion, well, almost 19 billion source code files. We should have a party when it's 19. Yes. And some important information is the discontinued hosting platform are also archived in Software Heritage. So if you have lost some Google code or a Gitorious repository, it will be in Software Heritage. The feature that you should know when you come to Software Heritage is the Save Code Now, which works like a Wayback Machine. You can put a URL here and it will save it. It will save any code, not just your code. And you can browse the recent URLs that are here. Now, I don't have anything very, nothing that belongs to me here, but let's use something that is here and go and check it out. So you have the repository with its full development history. So it's not just one point in time, it's the full history with all branches and all releases, even though in this one, the releases are tags, so you can see it in the release tab. You can use the permalink box to SWID your software, to identify your software with a SWID. And when you do use the permalink box, you have the directory type, the revision type, which is a commit in the history, and the full snapshot identifier, which will give you access to all the branches and releases. Now, even if you use the directory type, while clicking on this add contextual information, you will get this same view when you copy it. While having a short SWID with the core SWID, this will bring you to a contextless directory. There's advantages and drawbacks. The big advantage that this SWID is actually, it is possible to calculate it locally on your machine. The drawback is that now that you have this SWID, you don't know where it came from. So I'm going to go back here and show you a last thing. I don't know, let's do that. Well, it's short, but hey, if you want to identify a few lines with the shift, you get in your permalink the lines, and then copying this will bring you to the same location. Well, now I'm at the same location, so that doesn't work, but hey, I tried. Here you go. Last but not least, we have the Add Forge now. New feature, well, it's rather new. And for using that, you need to be logged in. I'm going to do a very, okay, I logged in very quickly. That's nice. Here you can use this form to notify Software Heritage of a forge, maybe a GitLab forge instance that it's not on the main GitLab, public GitLab, that is not yet archived. You can notify Software Heritage, and then it will be completely pulled into Software Heritage. I think that's it for my presentation of the archive. I'm going to stop sharing and ask, well, and take a breath. And then I'm going to ask Lars to share his screen, and maybe we'll do Q&A at the end. Yes, that will be perfect. Yes, go ahead, Lars.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen. So let's get control of my windows here. 2 seconds. Okay, so what I'm showing now is the integration we have done with Software Heritage on Invenio RDM and Zenodo. So Invenio RDM is the underlying repository software that we use in Zenodo, and that means that this software integration will be available for everybody who have an Invenio RDM instance running. So what I'm showing you now is the sandbox instance of Zenodo. So this is not something that's yet live on the main production instance of Zenodo, okay? But it will be hopefully during the summer, okay? And I've here prepared a little bit in advance a deposit. So, but if you go on Zenodo and know Zenodo ready, you can click up here in the corner and start a new upload. And this is really for the use cases where you have some software that is sitting on your local disk. So if it's already on GitHub and you want it in Software Heritage, then it's likely already harvested by Software Heritage, right? But there's these cases where, you know, small scripts that have been developed locally where there's no Git repository and things like that, and you want to share it, then you have the possibility to upload it on a repository. In this case, it's the Zenodo I'm using, right? So I have my software here, I've uploaded the file. Then you can associate all the usual metadata for the repository. So that you say it's a software type, I can give it a title, I can add who are the creators of this software. And when you have a creator, you can connect it with of course, with the ORCIDs and the affiliations with RAWs. So you have this way of describing a research output with the descriptive metadata. So then what is being added now, so that's already on Zenodo today, what's being added, oh, sorry, I'm forgetting the license here. So you can also add the license, and this is, of course, it's based on SPDX license library. So you have the usual suspects here, but in case you want other types of licenses for your software, then we have the full SPDX vocabulary integrated. Then you can add other metadata like funding sources, all the other stuff. But the interesting part is a little bit further down, we have software here. So now you can add your repository link. You can add what is the programming language. There's some development stages. So these are new fields that are coming for software. And then once you've done that and you hit publish, okay, then this thing goes online. And initially you won't see anything here. And so it usually takes a little bit of time. So I'm using a different record now that already was ingested. But what happens in the background is that it already is being sent to Software Heritage. You will get a link here that says this has been archived in Software Heritage. You get the suite that Maureen was talking about before, and you can click the link here, and you'll be able to browse the software source code as it was integrated in Software Heritage. So right now, it's on the Zenodo sandbox, and you can test these things out. Just be aware that there's a 1 megabyte limit because we are integrating with the staging environment right now. There won't be this limit in production, but it's a staging environment. So then once the thing is online, so first we are able to couple the suite together with the DOI and get the DOI registered with this information. We also have that when you want to export this, for instance, to BibTeX or in the code meta format, let me just share a new screen here. Then you have that our BibTeX include a new software type for the bib LaTeX. Also, the code meta, we're able to export the code meta here, and we're identifying it with the DOI. Here in the actual, right now, there's still some rough corners around the edges, and there's, for instance, missing the suite ID link here inside the metadata, okay? But this is essentially the integration that makes sure that we can also get software source code that is sitting in small, I mean, either you can submit it there, but you can get your scripts and so forth into Software Heritage. And we can link the Software Heritage IDs with the DOIs. Okay, thank you. Then I'll hand it back.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. That was great. And thank you for the last minute save here with this demo. Again, we will keep the questions later. But if you have questions, we have in the document Q&A section, which is a bit lost in the file. But if you open your menu, it's just before the part with the links where you can test yourself this beautiful components. So feel free to add your questions there. I'm going to move to U mode with the Episciences and how demonstration. So please can go and share your screen.
Thank you, Moran. Just give me a sec. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Wonderful. Okay, so my name is Maud Medves. I'm working for INRIA, which is the French Research Institute in Computer Science, and I'm here today to present you two platforms, so HAL, which you see here, and Episciences. So I will be very quick because I have 7 minutes for two platforms, so I will try to be as complete, but also a bit on the quick side of things. So just a few words to start the presentation. HAL, if you don't know it, and I guess you don't necessarily do, that's the national repository in France. It does host the vast majority of French publications. It is multidisciplinary, and most universities and research performing organizations in France do have a portal on HAL. Epsciences, on the other hand, is a publishing platform hosting overlay journals, and it follows, or it has adopted the Diamond open access model. I do hope everybody knows what Diamond Open Access is. That's a open access model in which there are no fees for either authors or readers, so no subscription and no author processing charges. And what are overlay journals? Those are journals whose articles are not located on the platform, but they are hosted in a scholarly repository, meaning that the preprint has first to be submitted to the scholarly repository before being submitted to the journal. So in Epsciences' case, it means that Epsciences provides to its journals a reviewing environment, but it does not host the paper. The papers. The preprint and the published versions, and possibly all versions in between, they are located either in HAL or in archive. So that now that we all speak the same language, I will start with a brief demo of HAL. As I told you about HAL, it is a scholarly repository. So as such, it mainly hosts articles, conference papers, technical reports, and so on. But since 2018, I think it was, Moran, and if I'm wrong, correct me, it is also possible to deposit source code. So here I am I'm not in the sandbox, I'm on the Rion HAL, on the live platform of HAL. So HAL offers a service which is complementary to Software Heritage. That's very similar to what Lars just showed you. So while the source code itself is archived on Software Heritage, it can be described with rich metadata on HAL, and therefore it makes the source code citable. So if I'm one of the authors of a source code, I can go on HAL, like I'm currently doing. I can, it's gonna take me time to find where the...
on the right.
Software. Thank you. And here you'll see that I have two options. Either my source code is has been developed on a website or in a strange part which is not public, and there I can upload my files here, or I will just enter the SWID, and then it will retrieve or no, I will say it differently, or the code has been developed on a Forge, GitHub, GitLab, what you want, and you just have to enter the SWID there, and it will be retrieved from HAL. And there, similarly to what Lars showed earlier, you can fill in fields for metadata, so you can add authors. As I am submitting currently, I am considered as an author. What can I show you? You can have a description of your software. You can add keywords, the license, programming language, etc. So if I was in the first case, which is I upload my files, when I submit the code, the software, the source code itself is going to be transferred to Software Heritage. And
can I give you a SWID mode? Can I give you a SWID? Sorry,
yeah, but in fact, I'm no,
because
no,
I have a SWID to tell you.
Yeah, well, yeah, but so that's how it works. And now I'm just to show you that it's actually in production. I'm gonna show you what a source code description on HAL looks like. So the URL is here. I can give it to you later, so you can see that's the name of the code is Parcon Microservices. The author is Franck Michel. And then basically you have all the metadata here. So title, abstract, authors, so with his affiliation, the code repository, version, etc., keywords, programming language, and here you have the suite. I will close that window and show you that there's here in terms of you have that part of the screen where there's a list of publications hosted on HAL that refer to the code. So each one of them is an article. So here in that case, it's a conference paper that refers to the software I was talking about. So there's one last thing I want to say about HAL is that it's important to underline that there is a moderated workflow. So once your code is submitted, it's not directly online. It will be reviewed by curators. We'll make suggestions to enrich metadata if that is needed. And that's how the quality of the data is ensured. So I told you this functionality has been existing in HAL for a few years. And what was developed in the context of the Faircore for IOSC project is similar functionality for Episciences. So that new functionality allows an author submitting a paper to a journal to also add software as a supplementary material to his submission. And reviewers will therefore be able to assess the software along or at the same time as the publication. That's what I'm gonna now show you. So here I'm on the Episciences sandbox. So as an author, I can start the submission process. So submit a document. As it's an overlay journal, as I told you, the preprint has to be on HAL. So I'm gonna select the ID. Version was 1. Search. Okay, I will guarantee. Okay, and in the section which is my test mode. So here I submit the article to the journal. And now I will be able to my submissions. That's here. And here I'm now able to add linked publication, linked data sets or software to my submission. So I'm going to add a software. I will go back to the code I was showing you earlier. I click copy identifier. I should have worked. And here I copy paste the identifier. I add it, and basically the software has been added. So you see here, that's my submission. That's what I've done a minute ago. So you have all the information about the manuscript I submitted, and here in that section, software, you have the linked software. So I'm going to change window, and that's going to be another article because I'm otherwise I have to go through an entire process of administration. So now on my, okay, here. I'm now connected as a reviewer, so an editor has suggested I review an article. And as you can see, before accepting the invitation, I have all the information about the article. I see that there is a software associated, and I click, I agree to review this article. And of course, I have to connect. That was the unexpected part. Okay. I'm sure I'm gonna have to, okay. If I reload, demos have to go wrong. So what I wanted to show you,
demo effect. Don't worry about that.
So basically, what I wanted to show you is that as a reviewer, because here I will have on the same page the reviewing form, and there will be this iframe for software, which means that while I'm reviewing the paper, I don't have to go on a Git repo or on Forge to see what the source code looks like. Everything is on the same page, so I can navigate the software here directly in the reviewing form of AP Sciences. Now that's the end of my presentation, and I want to show you a real journal that exists. So that's GTC-AM, and they have implemented this functionality. So I'm going to show you one of the latest articles that was published by them, and it should be this one. So you can, that's the production environment. So if you go to the URL, you will see exactly the same thing as me. So that's the article, crack branching at low tip speeds. You have all the metadata of the published articles. And similarly, you have here all the direct access to the software via Software Heritage. So that means that as a reader, I don't have to look for a well-hidden data or supplementary material section that's not always findable. Everything is on the article landing page, and it's very visible, I would say. So that's it for me. I think I took too much time, and I apologize for that, Moran.
Don't worry about that. Thank you. I think I destabilized you with asking if you had the speed in place. But what I can ask you is to print screen this screen that you wanted to show and put it on the slide so everybody has access to that.
Okay.
So you can do that.
I will.
Thank you.
For the reviewing form, I will do that.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. And now I'm going to move to Maxence. Maxence, introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Maxence Sudrose. I'm a junior scientist and doctoral researcher at the Department of Mathematics of Karlsruhe in Germany. And today I'm about to, along to Maud and Lars, I'm about to talk about the work we're doing with Moran regarding the FAIRCOR 4 Years project. So first I can introduce a bit on what is SVMAT, because I'm in charge of the SVMAT project. SVMAT is a leading catalog for mathematical software. I can show you a bit here. So SVMAT is a resource of metadata about mathematical software. It is basically an extension of service that is very famous in the mathematics domain, which is ZBMAT. Software are detected, collected, and curated by our team. And we collect and curate the information to build a registry, a rich registry of metadata about mathematical software. Today we have more than 42,000 software registered in our database. But let's go back to what we do. So here, a little example. So among the software we are working on and we collect, one is very famous. It is SageMath. SageMath is, as you can see, we collect many metadata, and like also, and that's something we're very proud of, we spot where the software are seated in our research articles in ZBMAT. And here you can see, for instance, for the software is seated in more than 2,000 publications. And so for this software, we can say that with metadata that are manually curated, that SageMath is related to all the softwares. We can also give information related to the home page related to the authors, because also at ZBMAT we have also a database of authors So we will have a rich system regarding the mathematics research and also regarding the software. So I directly dive into the topic of suite because it's very important for Moran and for me as well. The suite, so as she explained before, this is an intrinsic identifier. It's computed directly on the source code, and that's very important. And this is exactly the reason why at Easymath we decided to make the suite own. So just I will show you. Here we click on, if you are a mathematician, you arrive on Easymath, you look for a software, you just arrive, you click on the suite, and just you can find the exact version of the source code associated with the metadata. I think this is a very great feature, and especially as beyond, and she just showed it before, but I will show it again because I like it. You can just show us typically if you want to select a particular release of a software you want to suite, you can use the revision, you can add contextual information associated with identifier. So it's a very rich identifier. This is exactly why we decided to adopt it at Easymath. Just to show you a bit of preliminary work we started to do, we have started we initiated a mapping between our identifiers for software and the source code of this software with the suite. And here we are very proud to show that for all the GitHub software that has been developed with GitHub, we are able to have an identifier for the extrinsic metadata and also an identifier for the intrinsic information of the software. So I think this is a very great combination. Also about this metadata, so they are displayed in our database in our own homemade vocabulary. And also we currently working on mapping our metadata to the standard code meta, which is a standard vocabulary to describe software. So here, just I will show you a bit. Here, it's a nice table in a wiki instance. Wiki is great for that, to show a bit JSON table. And so you can find again all our metadata in the code meta vocabulary. So the idea behind is to be interoperable with other service who wants to use this metadata. And also, and that's very important, other scholars who want to use this metadata to find information they want to use for citation in their work. And last but not least, also this metadata, to be sure to be safe, exactly as the way we use the safe code now endpoint to have the source code that is in a safe place. We will deposit more metadata of the software of Easymath onto the software heritage service. So I think I'm done. I make it very short, but I think I can say that the ground is yours, Moran. I will give you back the mic.
Thank you very much, Maxence. It was short and sweet, but I think that you shared exactly what we need to discover. So it's excellent. And I'm going to open the floor for questions before going to the questions that are in the document. If someone wants to go live and ask a question and kind of exchange, that's a good. I'm good with that. So please, Maxence, can you stop the share? We're going to look at your faces if you are here. There's no faces here. Oh, there's some faces here. Oh, good. Good to see. Hi everyone. In a few minutes we will do some activities. So it's good to kind of start with an easy activity, which is asking our experts for anything you want. Ask anything you would like to know. Anyone wants to take the floor and ask a question? Because the questions in the document are my questions, so I want to give first maybe someone here.
I have a very general question, and I apologize I missed the beginning of the meeting. I see that a lot of these other infrastructures are meant to, they allow you to include your GitHub repository link, and then they also create an archive of the source code. I'm wondering, what is like the general value for creating that redundancy? Is it intentionally to create redundancy so you have another source of a backup of your code?
That's a great
very
question.
general question. I'm sorry. I'm
but
also
it
a
is,
newcomer here, so I'm just trying to get to know the community a little.
That's good. That's a good question, and a great question for me, because I'm representing software heritage, and the redundancy comes from having it on GitHub maybe, and having it also in software heritage. Well, GitHub and all forges that are online are not archives, so you don't know if they will be discontinued, and you don't know if the authors. If you are the author, you know when you delete it, but maybe if you are dependent on some software, you will not know if this code disappears. So it's good to archive it. Now, there are different services providing different features, making sure that you can cite, reference, describe, and actually have other kind of advantages that are not possible with just a Git URL. So that's the baseline. I do understand the landscape is large and there's many services. And I'm going to touch a word on the side codes consortium, which is the consortium of all those repositories and registries that come together and discuss these very important topics. So I understand that might be something to discover. Yes.
Thank you. That definitely makes a lot of sense, and it's great to have that archive for sure.
Welcome. I see, Neil, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, it's just to say there's a question that's come in on the chat, which says, what metadata standard for software are you using, if there is one? So I guess that's directed at all of the presenters.
Should one take the question, or should I answer it? Because I feel like I took the first question, but Lars, you could have take this question. Yeah, go ahead.
So I can. So for Invenio RDM, we store thing in an internal data model that looks a lot like DataSite, and then we export to many different data models, right? One of them being CodeMeta, which is schema.org and JSON-LD, and there's many different. And I think for the different other repositories, it's in a similar manner. But correct me if I'm wrong, right?
That's correct.
Thanks, Mos, for confirming that. One of the requirements or recommendations in the CIRS report that I've shared very briefly, that there is one is using the CodeMeta vocabulary. That each repository, each infrastructure does a little bit differently. Yes. Any other question? Or maybe Maxence, you want to say a word on that, on the vocabulary side, because you have expertise on that.
I mean, I'm happy to see this question of Gevertje Blumen that I met, I think 1 year ago in the context of the gap analysis report. And it was already a topic, I think, CodeMeta this time. But yes, on our side, we considered we are adopting DataSite for metadata because it's still because this is a standard, and also to communicate with other services that are based on the DataSite vocabulary. So we will describe the metadata software on DataSite. It is currently one of the work on the one my team is working on, but definitely CodeMeta is our main target for the metadata.
Thank you, Maxence. Last question before I'm moving on to our next part of this session.
There are two questions in the notes document.
Yeah.
Are those your ones?
I know. Yeah, they were mine. Yes, exactly. I can tell them. I can ask you, Lars. Will metadata moderation be available with the new communities features? Will that be possible?
It is available.
It is available already, right? Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. So when you submit to a community on Zenodo, then it goes in as a new request, and you can both the curator and the submitter can edit the metadata, and you can have a conversation with the submitter of the document. So that's something that's possible now with the new version.
Excellent, thanks. That's very good news for me, but for everybody here, I imagine. I see that there's a hand raised. Aaron, do you want to ask a question?
Hi. So we've seen various systems for sharing source code. It's my experience that source code that's shared doesn't usually work. It's usually missing some information that's necessary to get it to work. Is there anything we can do to encourage good practices or to verify that results are actually reproducible?
This is a very good question as well. So a year ago, we have published through another European project something called the Research Software Metadata Guidelines. And one of the aspects that is dealt in this guideline is reproducibility and the things that are, what do researchers need to provide so that their software is correctly described and can be reused as well. So this is a tough thing to do. I don't think that this is the only answer, because we need tools, we need ways to also have training to get that, people to get this knowledge from. But if you want to refer to something that exists currently, is this Research Software Metadata Guideline, on which Neil and myself have worked on. Yes, Neil, I see your hand raised. Maybe also you have another answer.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that can be done to improve practices around reproducibility, but I was also going to answer to say that there's still a benefit to sharing source code, even if it is not what I would call out-of-the-box reproducible, simply because in many cases the reason why we're looking to share the source code is not necessarily for kind of like out-of-the-box reproducibility, but instead for transparency or for historical purposes, or for a lot of other potential reasons why we choose to preserve software. So I think it's a really good point that you're making, and there are other initiatives that are looking at making source code easier to rerun and more reusable. But I think it's also the case that there's reasons to share source code and to publish source code that are not only around reproducibility.
Thank you, Neil, for completing this answer. And thank you, Aaron, for asking that. It is a quite large topic. I'm going to stop the questions here because we do have questions for you. So let's move to this part. If you have still questions for our demonstrator, well, our experts, feel free to use the Q&A section. And if they have these questions later on, you can continue using it, and I will ping them if needed. So now I'm going to share again my screen, and I'm going to start by sharing. What am I sharing? I'm going to share. Sorry. I'm going to share this one. Yes, this is the one. Okay. Okay, share. Sorry. So before going back to the presentation, just wanted to let you know that you have the links here to check the, well, all the components that were developed in the context of ERCO for EOSC. And if you would like to volunteer to be a tester of these new upcoming components, please insert your name here. Then we will move to the activity, but before moving to activity, a last two slides, one about an upcoming project called SOFAIR, which was launched in January, so it's in the middle of work about building bridges between infrastructure, establishing a machine-assisted workflow embedded into widely used open scholarly infrastructure, assisting researchers in identifying, describing, registering, linking, and archiving research software, and actually is kind of a connector of connectors. So the fact that we are now connecting different scholarly infrastructure to software heritage will be very useful in the different types of workflow that can provide more credit to researchers. So if you something that is interesting, or if it interests you, you can reach out and ask me about that, because I'm on this project as well. Last thing before the activity is the Consortium of Registries and Repositories. It is a consortium. We are meeting every month. Tomorrow is the next, is a monthly meeting. It is we have 37 resources in this consortium. It's a forum to discuss best practices and collaborate on the Code Meta adoption. So you have heard a little bit about Code Meta. If you want to know more about it, there are some presentations in the PsyCode's website. And if you are an infrastructure holder, you are welcome to join the consortium, but you are also, it's an open meeting, so you can join if you are interested in hearing out. Okay, the path towards adoption. Why do I ask you about adoption? Because we are working tirelessly to bring to this community and the researchers worldwide functionalities that might not be things that you need. And we need your help to identify how we can make these components adopted. So I've used this meme. Our users are maybe cats, but I hope they are not as tricky as cats, and that we can find ways during this session to reach out to our community. So first question, and you'll do it on the document, is what's the current status of research software dissemination within your institution, organization, or community? So I've noted a few options, but you feel free to write whatever you want on the document. I'm not going to share the document yet, but you can see if people are writing in. No, nobody is writing in. Where are you guys? Go into the document, and that's the first question to answer. So you can write your name, but you can also drop the name and just write what's the current status. You can share also insight, experiences, challenges. This will help us understand collectively this landscape. So you have now 5 minutes. Let's see. Yeah, I originally put down 10 minutes, but since we have a bit late on schedule, 5 minutes would be good. Let's do 5 minutes. Thank you. I see people are moving in the document, so please. Please do so, because it will be very helpful later on for us to know more. No. Excellent. I see a lot of GitHub on this page. Thank you. Thank you very much. If you have any comments that you would like to share, maybe share the status in your institution, or maybe some changes that you've seen happening recently when talking about dissemination. Nobody wants to share, but you are sharing very nicely on the document. So thank you. Continue, share. So here we have also the institution code repositories. So this is good to know that with the Forge, add Forge now request in software, that you can pull all the Forge in one if it's an open forge. Well, the open projects on the forge. Excellent. I see Dataverse based. Yes. Good to know. Excellent. Let's I'm moving to slideshow. Should I give you another minute? Yes, I said 5 minutes. Yes. I'm going to give you another minute. Okay. I don't have a buzzer, but let's move to the question 2. How do we encourage researchers to use existing infrastructure features or services? When I say existing, I mean also the ones that would be existing really soon. So how would you encourage your researchers to adopt something that is existing? So I see a lot of GitHub, and we said, and thank you, Dennis, for asking this question, because this is a major question for this part. Why do we, if we have GitHub, why do we need all of this? Exactly right. So how do we well, encourage them to go ahead and do a deposit on Zenodo, or do an EpiScience article where you link it to a suite, or create a metadata record on SW Math if you are a mathematician? What would you, how do you encourage your researchers? And in the file, I've added what strategies and incentives that could lead widespread adoption among the research community. What can we do to have more adopters? So that's the question. Do you know what? It's kind of a brainstorm. Don't have to have the right answer for that. I'm going to give you 3 minutes because, again, I want to leave some time for the 2 last questions that Neil will do, and a brief moment of update on the FAIR for Research Software principles. So you have 3 minutes. I see we have a dropout rate because in the last questions, there were more answers than in this question. Maybe it was an easier question. But if you don't have any idea, that's okay. I encourage you to even share something that you think is not relevant. And this time I won't share the screen because it's kind of, maybe it's, yeah. I can tell you that we have words, keywords, workshops, training, showing how to, teaching, examples in place. Yes. Yes. Warnings. Yes, Dennis. We need to warn them. That's good. If you don't archive, you will lose your website. You know, with the Wayback Machine, if you have used references to URLs online, and now you found yourself, even with the RDA, so you don't, that's a quick comment. The RDA has changed website in the last 2 weeks, or maybe more than just last 2 weeks, and they have a real struggle, and lots of URLs are broken, even for RDA outcomes. And so archiving is very important. Yes, we don't have any DataCite representative here because I think RDA outcomes have a DataCite DOI, so that's a question. But yes, Okay, I think I've passed the time, so I'm going to move to you, Neil, with question 3.
Thanks, Moran. So very similar here. You know what to do. The third question is, are these infrastructures and services enabling research software fairness? And Moran has put in a hint here saying, absolutely. But what we're looking to find out is, can you give us some examples of some of these infrastructures and how they enable research software fairness in the communities, the institutions, the organizations that you're part of? And then the harder question, which is, can you say whether these are being valued within your community? Because I think all of us can point to an infrastructure that does help enable some aspect of research software fairness. But are these infrastructures and the advantages that they provide being valued? And we'd really like to see success stories here. However, if you have a reason why they're not valued, please feel free to put those in as well. It's always wonderful seeing all these little kind of like colored cursors moving along and typing in different things. Okay, so some of the things here that we're seeing are that the values for software are not being software is not being valued so much because the focus from organization is on data availability, which I think is very true. It's something that many of the organizations that I've seen have been putting their limited resources to focus on data availability and data fairness. But at least then there is something to build on there. There's an interesting one here around someone has put in that our researchers only seem to want a DOI and don't see the need for actually archiving their software or code. So citability is important to them, but less the long-term availability. And again, trying to put a positive spin on it, at least then there's an encouragement to improve the metadata relating to the description of the software, which is better than having a completely unfindable, undescribed piece of software. There's someone has put that their organization is continuously striving towards fairness and open data, which I think is great, and perhaps then fair software will come up next. I'm going to give people another kind of 2 minutes on this. So there is people are starting to use citation files in their code repositories, but there's still a lack of awareness around them. So I think a lot of the questions are a lot of the answers are pointing to a disconnect between what the researchers are wanting and what we as the kind of practitioners and people supporting fairness might want. So maybe this is back to the picture that Moran showed just before this section around user needs. So it is an important thing to remember that you should focus on what the user needs, even as you're developing the other product features, because it's an easy way of getting from what the user needs and what the user wants to what you might be able to provide to them that they'll get excited about next. So yeah, let's see if we can get to a cat tree with FAIR. Okay, and then just one last bit here. Yeah, there's a few things here that are coming up around the other things which organizations are pushing, things like open science, innovation, and so on. So being able to kind of use these to help promote infrastructures for fairness of software, I think will be important as well. Dan, do you want to come in at this point?
Yeah, I was just going to say, maybe not to go too far in what you were saying regarding what users want, because sometimes users don't know they want something because they don't know what's available, and what they want is limited by what they're thinking about. So I think that if you just think about only what users say they want, then you probably don't actually go as far as you might be able to.
Indeed. And I think that's the kind of key, is that you need to be able to show that you're able to give users what they want and then move towards what users need. Okay. Thank you very much for answers on this one. Well, let's go on to the last question now in this interactive part of the session. So question 4 is, how do we encourage researchers to follow guidelines, principles, and recommendations? So this is really good following up from your answers to questions 2 and 3. You've put in a lot of different things there. Particularly in question 2, there were lots of suggestions for different types of guidelines and principles and recommendations, things like software management plans and so on. So how do we encourage researchers to follow these? And I think it relates to a lot of the questions that came up as well in the discussion after the infrastructure presentations. So I think one of the kind of key ones that's clearly coming up to start with is that researchers around you are not aware of any existing guidelines or recommendations regarding research software. So kind of a clear one here is simply being able to make these more visible, or indeed for them to be written in the first place. A lot of things are around incentives, recognition, and reward, which are kind of clear drivers that we've seen for both research software and for other things. And also examples, so kind of clear examples that people can follow. I think also one of the things that would be really useful is, have you seen anything that's worked really well as an incentive in a related, for a related research output or object? So if you've seen something that's really worked for data, feel free to put that in. Also, if you've seen anything that's really worked for open access, put it in. And yes, Mo, do you want to come in?
Yeah, actually, because I think it's a very difficult question, and on a related topics, which is publications in my institute, the only thing that did work 10 years ago to have all publications on a scholarly repository was to make it mandatory. And that's terrible to say. I'm sorry to just intervene to say that. But what happened? I mean, I think it was 2013. Okay, if you want your publication to be assessed during your researcher assessment, it has to be located on HAL. And that's how it worked. And currently, and we are a computer science institute, so people, researchers are aware of the importance of software, but still it's not mandatory. And some of the researchers, and they are not a majority, do understand the importance of making software visible, archived, etc. But it's not the majority of researchers, clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, and were there any drawbacks when that was made mandatory? So what were the consequences?
No. Well, people complained, but apart from that, I don't think there were major drawbacks. I don't. Actually, people complain because saying that it's not that they did not want to do it because they understood the importance of open access, but they said it was a lot of administrative work on top of their research activities, etc. So, and I think we are facing exactly the same thing with data and softwares.
Yeah. Some recent work that my organization did was pointing at exactly the same thing. It's not that people weren't receptive to doing this. It's that they felt that they didn't have the time to do it, and it was going to be extra effort. And so they couldn't justify it in the short term. And what was interesting was that it was even hard to persuade them that although they were longer term benefits that would improve the amount of time they had in the future, that was not enough because short term, the benefits would not come fast enough. So,
and I think that in that respect, software heritage is a wonderful archive, because usually when I have a researcher say, is your software archive? They say, oh no, and I don't want to do that, and it's gonna. And I say, is it located on a public GitHub? Yes. Well, it's probably already archived. So all you have to do is let your funding agency know of the the SWID, the identifier, and so that it's publicly available and archived. So that's all you have to do: find the SWID and copy paste it in your reporting to the funding agency. So that's a real. I mean, that's wonderful in that respect.
And I think maybe that's a good place to kind of end this question on is you know, how do we encourage researchers to follow guidelines, principles, and recommendations? Make it so that they're following them already, just by doing very, very little. And software heritage is a great example of how best practice can be enabled without researchers having to do very much. Okay, thank you. Shall we move on to the last part of the session? So in the last part of this session, we just wanted to give you an update on the FAIR for Research software principles, introduce them to some of you if you've not heard of them already, and say what's happening over the next year around the principles. So the FAIR for Research software principles are something that has come out of a working group that was spun out of the software source code interest group, which worked to create a set of these principles to make research software findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, and a whole set of different associated things around it. So if you're interested in those principles themselves, you can find it as an output via this link on Zenodo. There's also a lot of different things such as videos, papers, guidance that you can see if you want to find out more about how to apply the FAIR for Research software principles. Do you want to go on to the next slide, Moran? One thing that was in the FAIR for Research software principles is a recognition that it's not just FAIR that we need. If we're wanting to truly make research more reusable and more useful for society, it's about open research and FAIR being one part of this. And so this diagram from a paper by Moran and by Dan and Tam Honeyman is really kind of showing the sort of different ways in which you can make something minimally fair, which is the sort of second box on the left, all the way through to being really truly fair and open and reusable. So there are lots of different levels to fair. And one of the things we're trying to do as we are encouraging the adoption of the FAIR principles for research software is to get people at least to do the minimum and then to encourage them to do more and more as they see the benefits. And I think that's kind of speaking to the fourth question. So next slide, Moran. So where are we now with the FAIR principles for research software? So we are now at the stage where we are about to embark on a review because it is actually 2 years since the FAIR principles for research software were published. It doesn't feel like this for me as one of the people working on them. It feels like it was only a few months ago that they were published, but they have been published 2 years ago, and even before that, there was a lot of development by different organizations who were looking at different routes to adoption. So where we are now, and the software source code interest group has this role as being the kind of custodians for the FAIR for Research software principles, is that we are at the point where we can now look to the community to identify if there are any changes that are required to the initial version 1.0 of the principles. So there is planning for a community review that will be conducted by the Research Software Alliance in collaboration with the Research Data Alliance and Force 11. And Dan Katz is on this call. He is the person who will be leading and coordinating this review. So one thing to watch out for is that there will be calls for input and participation coming along later this year, where what we're looking to do is get people's opinions around the FAIR for Research Software principles, get examples of how they're being used, how they've been adopted, and really assess whether there's things that need to be changed in the principles, things that need to be clarified, and move forward to kind of the next stage of adoption of the principles. Next slide, Moran. So as mentioned, we are always keen to hear about your experiences around FAIR for Research Software adoption. There are a number of people who've written about this recently, for instance, for FAIR BioRS. There's also a blog on the link on the left of this slide, which is looking at different cases of adoption 2 years on from the publishing, that's been written by Dan and others. So there are lots of examples now that we see of how people have been putting into practice the FAIR principles for research software. We're also seeing a lot more other things coming up, things like tooling, so things around making it easier to collect and curate metadata for software, which is something coming back to the questions earlier, around metrics for FAIR assessment and tools for FAIR assessment, and around the way that FAIR for Research Software principles interact with some of the other things, for instance, around machine learning models or FAIR for virtual research environments. So one of the things that we really encourage people to do is to share your experiences with FAIR for Research Software. Send them to any of the group chairs, send them into the calls for participation. We are always happy to have people sharing these kinds of user experiences and adoption stories at these sessions during the Research Data Alliance plenaries. So, final slide. Okay, so this is sort of next steps both for the software source code interest group and also next steps for a session that we are proposing to run for the next plenary. So if you could, can you go along to the feedback form that Moran has posted in the chat? And what we're looking for is, firstly, having kind of been a participant in this session, is there anything that you would volunteer to contribute to the software source code interest group? In terms of the sorts of things that we're doing, what is it that you've been enjoying and would like us to keep doing in terms of the software source code interest group? Are there any things that can be improved? Are there any things that we should stop doing? Indeed. So how would you like us to run these sessions in future plenaries? And then finally, the last question that we'd like to ask you, we are thinking of doing a session that is primarily on the adoption and future roadmap of the FAIR principles for research software. And one of the things we are wanting to check is to find out which people are planning to join the next plenary of the RDA on-site in November. So we're just trying to gauge who is likely to be attending. So even if you're not certain, be useful to kind of get an idea of if you are likely to join a software source code interest group session in person there. Okay, I think for this one, I can't see whether the responses are coming in, but I will look to Moran to kind of tell me if you're all filling out these forms.
Well, the form, we will check them out later because, well, we don't have a live Menti to see how many people are coming to P23. If you want to drop a line here or in the form that you are planning on that, please do. don't have high expectations from the software source code interest group for this very far location for us, especially. With that, I want to thank you, Neil, for ending us our final part. But I want to thank especially the experts here that came along to the software source code interest group to share the features, the new features, the components. So thank you, Lars, thank you, Maud, and thank you, Maxence. Thank you, Neil and Julia, our co-chairs. It is also a call for the volunteers here. If you would like to join as a chair of the software source code interest group, having more hands on deck would help us maintain this interest group to keep this forum ongoing. We are not doing regular meetings. We are just having this plenary session. Sometimes we have some information going in the mailing list. And if you are not yet a member of the software source code interest group, we should invite you to join in because it's not a spamming group. We don't have a lot of emails. We just have the important ones coming. I think that's it. We can say that archive your code and describe with metadata. Don't forget that, or at least try to. I'm going to stop sharing and give you maybe 3 minutes back, unless you have questions and that you have.
There's just one thing I see that Dennis has put in a question around how to join the mailing list for the group. So recently there's been a change in the web platform that the RDA uses. So if you previously had an account with the RDA, make sure that you search for your email to find the link that's been provided to you to reconfirm your account details. And then afterwards, if you visit the link that's I both put in the chat and also in it's in the notes, you can join the group, which should also put you onto the mailing list for this group. If you haven't got an account, you'll need to create an account on the RDA website before you're able to do that. So you can't, I don't believe you can just sign up with an email address. Yeah, I believe you have to have an account for the RDA web platform.
I've put the link in the chat directly to the group, so you can just use the link, and if you have an account, exactly like Nick said. And I forgot to thank the most important people here. It's you guys that provided so many good answers on our document, and we can now use this and see how we move forward. So thank you very much for being active participants, and we wish you a pleasant day, afternoon, night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Many thanks all.